Yo, what's good, folks? Welcome back to Alex Abroad. This your boy Alex, and today the video is going to be very simple. It's me chilling at home. Essentially what this video is about is on the topic of why I left America and why I don't regret it. But let me preface this video by saying this isn't me trying to make America look bad or trying to bash the country or the people there. This is just me talking about my life, my decisions and the choices that I've made, and why leaving actually changed my perspective on a whole lot of things. Before I left and I went to China, a lot of people questioned me. They were like, oh, why are you going to a communist country? How could you like a place like this? You're from America. We represent liberty and freedom. And honestly, it was crazy. Actually, it's crazy now, in hindsight, to think about this, because it was coming from the mouths of people who have never left their country, who have never left their state, their city, their county, whatever it might be. So, I've heard a lot of things. And like I said, I'll delve into these things as, the video progresses. And I'm here to tell you how it really went down. Okay, how I started to see the world differently and why I don't regret making a move. So yeah, let's go ahead and get into the video. How was my life before the military? Well, the best way I can explain it is this. I was 17 years old. I was living in essentially what's called an orphanage, or at the time they want to call it a children's home to make it sound more friendly, I guess. And it was called Croswell Children's Home. It was on 11 Croswell Drive in Sumter, South Carolina, right across the street from the hood. The funny thing is, when we got a little bit older, we started sneaking out at night and going across the street into the hood to hang out, to smoke, to drink, to try to buy cigarettes while we were still underage. It was maybe 15, 16, 17 years old at that time. What happened to me essentially was I outgrew the children's home. So the guidance counselor came up to me and he was like, look, you're almost 18 years old. You're considered an adult. So this guy told me to pack my suitcases and get my bags, my backpack, and my clothes. And he literally dropped me off in the middle of the street and just left me there. And they knew I had no immediate family I can go stay with. I was not going back to my adoptive family because they gave me up in the first place after adopting my brother, my sister, and myself from Russia. So it's crazy, right? And that could be, I guess, another video. One of the guys who used to come and hang out with us, play basketball, and, he organized some activities. His name was Scott Estep. He found out about it and he was like, hey, Alex, you can come and you can stay with me until you figure out what you want to do. And maybe I can help you out along the process of, the whole situation that you're going through. So I went in and stayed with them, and I guess he kind of realized that I wasn't really interested in doing much. I just kind of, when I finished working for him, and for those of you who might want to know, he renovated and flipped houses at that time. I would always sneak off and go back around Croswell and hang out with these boys. And he was like, look, he gave me an ultimatum. He was like, you either go and join the military, which, like I said, in hindsight, this was the best option for me, or you can go and live with these guys and see if they take you in. And at that time, I was kind of rebellious, and I thought hanging out with those guys and smoking weed and drinking and just getting into mischief, selling drugs, mischievous things, I should say. Okay? I thought that was the life. And I was happy to kind of get out of there as well. But man, it's just crazy to sit here and think about this right now and realize how stupid and naive I was at that time. But like I said, I digress. So I grabbed my stuff. I went over there and he told me, he was like, look, you probably won't last a year there. And a year goes by. And what did I do that whole year? I smoked weed. I drank. Went to the clubs, tried to sell drugs and do all kinds of stupid stuff where I thought these are the highlights of my youth. the highlights of my life. Like, I love this neighborhood, I love this block, I love these people. And right now I'm just hearing myself say this stuff that I was saying back then, and not realizing how stupid I was to think these type of things back then. It's just a place where everybody is going nowhere fast. It's called a trap for a reason. You get stuck there, okay? And you just keep repeating the cycle over and over again. And like I said, for me at that time, it felt okay. I guess I had like an epiphany, or through a moment of maybe introspection. I ended up getting a job at that time working for a poultry plant called Goldkist. And I was over there cutting up wings, standing in this big fridge or freezer. And I was cold, I was miserable. I mean, I still kind of stuck with the job a little bit. And one day I just woke up and I was like, man, I'm going nowhere and I'm going there fast. So what did I do? I thought about the plan, or that seed that Scott tried to plant into my mind about joining the military. So what do? I go to the recruiter station and they had me take the ASVAB like right on the spot. And I scored probably like the bare minimum. So I go into the Marine's office and it was like, nope, we don't want you. You scored so low. The Air Force was not having it at all. The Coast Guard, nope. The Navy, I was like, nah, I don't want to be stuck on some boat or a ship my whole military career. And so I waltzed my ass into the Army's office, and they was like, look, based on your ASVAB score, you can either go infantry or you can go combat engineer. And they showed me the combat engineer video, and you get to build bombs and blow shit up. And I was like, yo, you got to sign me up right now. So, you know, everything kind of fell into my half-assed plan or whatever. In process in Columbia, South Carolina. I actually forgot the name of the base over there. Jeez, it's like on the tip of my tongue, and I'm literally like from there. And then they flew me to Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, where I went to basic training in AIT, graduated, and boom, my ass was off to South Korea. And I remember landing in Incheon, and it was like all the weight on my shoulders fell off. It was like so surreal, and I can't even articulate or describe it. But I came to my first duty station, and I immediately recognized that I was amongst other misfits as well. Like, not everybody in the military is proper or whatever, you know. At that time, I'll be honest, they were kind of taking anybody. So we had like ex-crackheads and meth heads and drug dealers, and they all ended up getting waivers to join the military because at that time, they needed bodies. Okay, and I'm gonna just leave it at that. I didn't really think too much about it. I loved my time in the military. I met some amazing people, great people, and I learned so much, grew so much being in the military. And for the first time in my life, I had to be accountable. I had structure, I had discipline, and I was kind of learning on the go and soaking all this up. And, you know, I'm not trying to brag on myself, but I was what they call a high-speed soldier. All the ranks that I got up to, E4, and I was about to go to the board, you know, to go for my E5, and everything was wavered to me because I was an exceptional soldier. I did everything by the book. If you asked me how to do this and how to do that, I knew how to do it because I loved my job. I loved the senior NCOs that were appointed over me, like my squad leader, my platoon leader, and you know, my first sergeant. Like, everybody was so cool and down to earth. And you can ask anybody who was stationed with me in Korea in 2007, like every single person, almost, I can bravely say this, they had an amazing time. And a lot of people ended up AIPing, which means like you can extend your duration of being stationed in Korea for another year. And when my dumb ass found out, it was too late. So anyway, I guess that's another story as well. And like I said, you know, we shared the same goals. There was teamwork, there was responsibility, and at that time, the Army was the army of one. So if one person fucks up, everybody suffers for it. And I believe, as wild as the military is today, that needs to come back, you know, because then it required people to hold each other accountable. And it was, like I said, it was some of the best times of my life. And it was a complete contrast to my previous life which was very repetitive and aimless back home. Like I said, where I smoked weed, I drank, I partied, chased girls, and living a life that was heading nowhere. And I don't want to put anybody on the spot, but like I ended up reconnecting with somebody from back home after being gone for like 18 years. And I was like, hey man, what's up? What are you up to? What are you doing? And you guys can guess pretty much what that person ended up telling me. Essentially, they're doing the same thing. And to me, that is, and this is not a judgmental thing, this is just my personal opinion. To me, that is crazy and baffling how after 18 plus years, someone could just be doing the same thing and just stuck in this vicious cycle that's designed, in a sense, if you don't take initiative to keep you there. Man, it's wild. So let's talk about moving to China. Okay, so prior to coming to China, I've had some friends that I've also met in Korea, and they was like, oh man, why do you want to go there? It's a communist country. You have no freedom. You can't say this. You can't go out and do that. Your organs will get harvested and sold on the black market. And like I said in the introduction of this video, this was coming from the mouths of people who have never stepped their foot into China, have never experienced what life is like. They all are fed this propaganda and this fear mongering that goes on from these media outlets or these people that propagate bullshit and fear mongering. You know what I mean? And I think America always had this issue with communism. You know what I mean? So they always try to tell people, oh, don't go here, don't do that. And to me, this is the stupidest thing ever. Obviously, I didn't buy into that. I just wanted to go step into the unknown and I guess experience life, because I've always heard, I've heard this quote before where it says, and I guess I'm kind of paraphrasing, where it says, you truly start living life once you step out of your comfort zone. And this is so prevalent to me because it is true, in my opinion, in my life on so many levels. This is how I experience growth. This is how I learn things. This is how I became more sound physically, emotionally, spiritually. All these things are attached, and I've experienced so much growth into China, which I kind of will, get into in this video. So, I had a lot of warnings of people telling me not to come. But what actually happened? I came to China my first round, and I stayed for 7 years. It was safe, it was productive, it was adventurous, it was the unknown, and I embraced it all. I've always had this sense of adventure, and nothing happened. I did my job, I made decent amount of money, the accommodations were provided, so I never had to worry about where I was gonna sleep, how I'm gonna eat, because at that time, and even still now to a degree, it's the best bang for your buck. Most of the jobs in China, they provide accommodations. So essentially what you're doing is maybe you're paying your utility bills and the rest of the money you're saving, unless some stuff happens that just happened to me recently where I had to go through some troubles, but I have a video already posted about that. So yeah, like, the thing is, every country has its problems. China is no different. I've encountered scammers. I encountered crazy ass bosses who wouldn't pay us our salary. And at that time, when I was first here, I was working illegally, but so were thousands and thousands of other foreigners, because at that time, in 2014 to about 2017 or 18, China was taking anybody because they built this multi-billion-dollar industry when it comes to, you know, ESL and bringing teachers over here. They were letting anybody come. And like I said, I work with Africans, I work with Pakistanis, I work with Indians, I work with Albanians, I work with Italians, with Germans, from Russians, Ukrainians, like all sorts of people were over here teaching English. And I cannot blame them because they sought an opportunity, they found it, they came, and they made some money. It was safe, it was productive, it was adventurous, and I also had, like I said, my peaks, my highs. It was all here. It's no different. You know, maybe this could be another video as well. Like, America and China are more so alike than they are different. I think that would be actually a good video. They really are. And like I said, maybe this be another video that I make. But why leaving America was the best choice? Well, it exposed me to different cultures, to different lifestyles and opportunities. And like I said, you can learn so much from a different demographic of people, of being around, you know, with people of different ethnicities, different cultures, different lifestyles, different foods. And in the midst of all this, being in the unknown, that's when I experienced my first, I guess, intense moment of independence and personal growth. Like, we did have people that helped us out with like minuscule things like getting banking and stuff like that, because that's a crazy process here in China. But for the most part, I was independent. I had to do what I had to do, and I lived my life outside the comfort zone. So yeah, my perspective has changed, my habits have changed, my priorities and my mindset has changed, and I think it changed for the better. Now, I cannot go back and say how my life would have ended up if I would have stayed in America, because I don't know. I cannot tell the future or the past or, you know, whatever. I don't know. Maybe I would have figured something out. Always been kind of like a resilient type of person with a hustler's mentality. And I'm not saying I would have ended up like selling drugs or in jail. I mean, I very well could have, the way the trajectory of my life was going and the type of things that I was getting into. But like I said, I decided to change my life and step out of that. So yeah, this was one of the best choices that I made, and I don't regret it. If I could go back and relive all this over again, I wouldn't even hesitate, exactly to the T. Because like I said, I've grown. You know, I've had some people that told me in, I guess, a negative connotation, like, oh man, you've changed. You're not the same person that you were before. I mean, after 18 years, if you haven't changed, if you haven't grown, if you haven't changed maybe your perspective in a sense, and then you're doing something wrong. That's my personal opinions. If you're just stagnant, then like, what are you doing with your life? And these are the people that judge people the most. Those who don't think for themselves. You know, they're getting fed all this propaganda and all this nonsense in their minds, and then they use that to judge base their opinions while they can't rationally think for themselves. And, you know, all this nonsense, you know, that's going on in America recently. And like I said, this is not me bashing America. This is real factual stuff. It goes to the idea of, you know, people that told me, oh, if you come to China, you can't say this and you can't say that. Well, people don't understand, you know, the way that this country governs or has rules, laws, and regulation is going to be completely different than it is in the West, specifically in the US where I'm from. It's not going to be the same. So for people to expect this to be, for China to follow the rules like America followed the rules, or do things the way that America does, that's the most ignorant thing people could say. And it makes absolutely no sense if you think about it. And when it comes to rules and regulations, they're not made for people who do the right thing. And like I said, I've done anything, I've done everything and anything I wanted to do while I was in China. And as crazy as it might seem, I've experienced more freedom with this type of thing than I did back in the States. That's why I don't regret it. Like, I've grew, I've learned. I've also learned to think for myself, and that's crazy that someone, it's crazy for maybe someone like me to say, spending most of my time in these quote unquote communist countries who don't allow free thinking. And I'm not basing this off my ideology. I'm basing it off what all this nonsense and garbage people spew. And I'm sure somebody will watch this video maybe and be like, oh, you're a Chinese shill. You're getting paid to say all these great things about China. Man, where the hell is my Ferrari? Where the hell is my multi-million-dollar mansion? Where's my $7,000 paycheck from the Chinese Communist Party, from the government? Where is it? Because if they're paying that kind of money and giving foreigners these type of things, sign me up, because I'm going to share the truth regardless. And this is the truth. Whether people believe it or not, this is my personal experience. And like I said, I loved it here. I had my moments where I became discontent and I wasn't enjoying it. And I would tell you guys the main reason is because I started listening to all that garbage that was being spewed by the media when the whole COVID situation happened. And it started to shape my mind because I was no longer thinking for myself. I was letting these outlets think for me. And this is why I've kind of left the first time, because I started to become negative. My perspective started to become negative, very pessimistic. And I was like, yeah, you know what? Maybe China is like that. But here I am again, second round, because I realized that those thoughts weren't my own thoughts. Those thoughts were being fed into my mind. It's perfectly orchestrated. That's why so many people are eating up all this bullshit, and I had to learn how to separate myself from that. So here we are right now in the present time. It is, let me see, it is currently Friday, January 2nd, and it's almost 8 p.m. over here. And here's what I realized. I just came back and I've been going through some stuff, folks. And I don't need to go in that. Like I said, I have videos that I've shared as to some of the things that happened. But I realized I've closed myself off recently. I'm missing that exploration. I'm missing that connection with people. I miss that unknown. And in a sense, I became stagnant. But I'm so blessed and thankful that I'm starting to realize this. And I want to go out there. I want to venture and start living. I shouldn't say hate, maybe that's a strong word. Maybe despise, in a sense, of people who victimize themselves and they blame all these things on external factors like, oh, you're this and that type of person, so you got all these privileges and all these opportunities in China. And to me, man, this is just, it's absolute bullshit. I just shared my life story, essentially, the condensed version of it with all of you, whoever's watching. And if I can crawl out of the shithole that I was in, and like I said, I'm just giving you the tip of the iceberg. There's so many details that I could have put in this video. It'd be like 3 or 4 hours long, which I'm not trying to do at the moment. But if I can crawl out of this dump and those circumstances and the things that were happening in my life by shifting and realizing, shifting my perspective and realizing like, this is not the life I want to live. Why the hell would I want to represent, die for a block or a piece of a neighborhood that I don't even know? Like, to me, this is absolute stupidity now that I think about it. And there's so many young men who are impressionable these days who actually believe this. And to a degree, I don't blame them, because I believed it at one point of my life. But life is so much more than that. Anyway, so yeah, I'm at a point where I kind of closed off myself. And I realized, growth isn't linear, but it's part of the journey. And I'm still here. I'm still alive. I got a roof over my head. I get 3 meals a day, or as much as I want. And it kind of boils down to also being grateful. And yeah, so here's the thing. life doesn't change by leaving your country. You have to leave what's keeping you stuck. There's another stupid cliche type of quote I've read before. You got to separate in order to elevate. That means if you want to go higher in life, you got to separate yourself from the bullshit and all the nonsense and all the things that are dragging you down. And this is essentially what I did. And like I said, this is not me bragging about myself. It's just, you know, I hope maybe this inspires somebody to step out there as well, to go into the unknown, dive in head first, not knowing what to expect. This is what makes it fun. And one thing I learned, and I think I kind of briefly touched on this in this video, is that, you know, comfort can quietly trap people even without extreme circumstances. And that's pretty much it for the video. Why I left US and why I don't regret it. Hope you guys have a good one. Peace.